webinar. You just need to submit them via the Q&A button, and we'll be answering questions at the end of the webinar. If you need to leave at any time, you can click the red Leave Meeting button. Okay, now I'd like to introduce you to today's presenter, owner of Turner Accountants. Welcome, Mike Turner.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Sinead. Before we start, apologies, the delights of working from home. I'm expecting my Sainsbury's order today, which always comes at 8 o'clock, due between 8 and 9, always comes at 8 o'clock. It's not here. So apologies when it does come. I'll have to pause for 2 minutes. Really sorry about that. I don't know what's happened. Anyway, let's get on. So yeah, so today's webinar is about getting paid. All important to us, of course. Businesses can't survive without cash flow. So thanks everyone for making time to listen to the webinar. We appreciate that these are difficult times with great uncertainty and concern for you all. We want you to know that we're here for you, although it's remotely at the moment. Hopefully that'll change soon, to give you whatever support we can to get you through these difficult times. So we're here to share you with practical things you can do to minimize the downside on your cash flow at this time. But before we kicked off, I thought I'd give you a thought of the day. When a recession does materialize, many experts agree ready cash is the oxygen that every small business owner requires to survive. So the agenda today, we're going to talk about the required mindset in these difficult times, your debtors system while working from home or in the office, lessons we can take into the future, support available in the meantime, your next steps and questions. So your required mindset in these difficult times. With our thought for the day in mind, you should never take your eye off the cash flow. And before we talk about strategies you can adopt, let's talk about 3 mindsets that you need to have. So you must be empathetic. You must approach your debtor management with backbone and heart. And it's okay to sell in these times, so long as you're solving problems for your customers that they have right now. Remember the analog of the oxygen mask in a time of emergency. You need to put your own oxygen mask on first. If your business falls over, no one wins. So we talked about being empathetic. So of course, it's not as simple as saying, right, oxygen mask on me, the customers pay or we won't help. We have heard some horror stories of businesses who are stopping credit and ramping up their debt collecting without any thought for how their customers are coping. We know this isn't you. So before we work out the best way to keep cash flow going, we need a framework. This framework starts with empathy, which we define as the ability to see things from your customer's perspective and be prepared to do something about it. Hence the idea of giving customers options as to how they can pay you. So, ask your customers how they're coping, ask them how their business is going, consider the loyalty they've shown you, and give the customer options about how they pay you. So have backbone and heart. So as long as we are being empathetic and giving clients choices, we can talk about how we're going to get paid. A useful mindset here is to remember to have backbone and heart. So backbone, it's okay to be paid for the value you provide. You're running a business which is equally challenged in these times. And heart, linked to your purpose statement, consider all options for payment. Be flexible and considerate in your approach. So it's okay to sell. The finals mindset in these times, especially if you're a service provider, is that it's okay to sell. So as long as your product or service is solving a problem for your customers, and so long as you're going to be paid for the work that you do. The spin cycle is a line of questions, starting with situation questions, then moving to problem questions. So let's use an example of a hairdresser. So here's a situation. You might ask questions like, how are you coping with being at home right now? Are you spending a lot of time on FaceTime or other calls with video on? So the problem questions, how do you feel that every day most probably is starting to feel like a bad hair day? And the impact questions, how do you think you're going to be feeling in a month from now? And the next step questions, I know we can't be certain when this will be over, but should we book you in for a full makeover in 3 weeks' time? Really sorry, I'm just going to have to disappear for 1 second now, for 1 minute. Not much though. Milk will do, okay. Right, hello, sorry about that. I'm really sorry about that. Okay, where were we? So your debtor system. So now we've talked about the 3 mindsets you need to have. We can talk more specifically about your debtor system in these challenging times. Firstly, I'll talk about best practice, then I'll share a guide and some scripts, and then I'll talk some more about credit control procedures. So best practice. Essentially, nothing should change. Just dial up your empathy. By engaging more with your customers around their particular circumstances, you can tweak your processes just for the customers who are going to struggle. Remember, not all of your customers are at a great risk here. COVID-19 should not give them an excuse not to pay you. You have done the work or supplied the product, you're running a business, you need to be paid. You should all be using a paperless system. If not, this is going to need to be your top priority, or your customers simply won't know how much to pay. Best practice control, credit control, is that you have great guidance notes for the team members responsible for your credit control and debt collecting. Things like flowcharts, scripts, and templates. We'll show you these shortly as we've put together a package on this for you. Many problems with debtors come about because we have not put great systems in place around giving credit in the first place. We'll talk about credit checks and outsourcing shortly. So here's a snippet of the guide and the credit control script we've put together. We're happy to share this with you at no cost off the back of this webinar. So if you just bear with me a second whilst I go to a different screen, then we hopefully will be able to share There we go. Hold on, where is it? Here we are. So yes. So if you can see that, then this is our credit management guides, the overview. We cover terms of trade. You must have robust terms of trade in place, be offering credit to customers. So we give you some things about what should be in there in terms of trade, what areas it should cover. And then billing and payments, some ideas on what you need to do with regard to invoicing. Payment terms, consider reviewing your payment terms. Automation of billing and payments, look at the automation of billing and invoicing as you can. And payments, can people be on direct debit, or can they use things like Stripe or PayPal? Debtor management, so you need to have a debtor management in process and a review of your debtors and a system with reviewing them. You need to record, very important this, you need to record all contact with debtors, saying exactly what they said to you and any promises they made, and privacy considerations. So we'll, and also a referral to an external debt collection agency. If you're not getting anywhere with your process, you get to the end of your process, then you should have in place a procedure where maybe you have to go legal in respect of collecting the debt. So we'll send that to you. Okay, so if we stop sharing that, and if I just find the other, you bear with me for a minute again whilst I get back to where we were on the slideshow. All right, if I can share that with you now. Right, so, okay, we should be back where we are. So, yeah, okay. So credit control services. So you've got to make a commitment to outsource and free up your time, build a relationship with your provider, not an ambulance at the bottom of a cliff, and use content for us and a credit manager as an interim step. So credit checks. So here's who we recommend for contact for credit checks for new customers. You don't want to inherit other firms' non-paying customers, even in the current climate. Credit checking should be a standard part of your onboarding process. That's why we include it in our cash flow management service. So lessons we can take into the future. So we've talked about best practice with your debtors, how to avoid working for people who can't pay. Now it's time to talk about what you need to do going forward from here to maximize your own cash flow. Some of these concepts you may have heard before if you came to our business continuity planning webinar. If this is you, then listen for the distinction and make notes about the actions you need to take, as we're asking for those actions in your feedback at the end. So your business cash conversion cycle.
Sorry, Mike, it's just the slide isn't on the screen at the minute. It's just
Right, sorry, I'm not sharing the right one. I did wonder, excuse me then, right. Let's see if we can get the right one up. How's that?
Perfect.
Right.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, so yeah, your business cash conversion cycle. So one of the most important ways to improve your business is to shorten your cash conversion cycle. In other words, get your cash quicker. What's super important in these times of crisis is that all businesses speed up their cash conversion cycle so that the economy keeps working. Paying your suppliers more slowly just creates problems for other businesses who most likely are suffering as much as you are. Let's take a look at the real example, a wholesaler. The wholesaler buys stock from suppliers, on average must pay the suppliers 45 days after buying the stock. The stock doesn't sell the moment it comes into the warehouse. Some stock sells quickly, other stock takes longer, and eventually some stock has to be discounted to get it all to move on. On average, stock is held for 60 days. When the stock is sold, credit terms are provided to customers, but a number of customers are not observing those credit terms. On average, it takes 60 days for customers to pay. So now we can calculate the cash conversion cycle. 60 days average stock holding plus 60 days to get paid by customers, less 45 days credit provided the supplier equals 75 days to convert inputs into cash. In difficult times such as this, we need to ensure you have a plan in place to shorten this cash conversion cycle. This is a process we recommend you do as part of your business continuity plan. Using the numbers from your most recent management accounts, we can work out the above numbers and calculate your cash conversion cycle. From there, we can discuss with you how we can work together to shorten this cash cycle, free up more cash. Excuse me. For example, if your debtors are 50,000 and your turnover is 500k per annum, a 10-day reduction in your cash conversion cycle is worth £13,700 to you. That is cash that you could really do with right now, I'm sure. We recommend you incorporate a review of your cash conversion cycle as part of your business continuity plan or forecast, so as to free up as much cash flow as possible. Business 101 cycle. Another area of focus to improve your cash flow needs to be on your Business 101 cycle in these difficult times. As we often tell you, there's a massive difference between profit and cash. Profit is what you pay tax on. Cash is the oxygen your business needs to survive. What is so important here is that, as well as improving your cash conversion cycle, you make plans to maximize your profit and at the same time finance your business correctly. Let's walk through this Business 101 cycle. Starting at the top, as an owner, you introduce cash into the business to buy assets. You may also borrow cash to purchase assets. Those assets are used to generate a profit. How you increase profit is to improve revenue or sales, which is difficult in this challenging times, but still possible, increase margin or efficiency, or trim overhead expenses. So now it's a very good time to be looking closely at potential new revenue lines, new potential customers, a pivot in your sales strategy, or what you can do to avoid losing existing customers. At the same time, you ought to be looking at how you can improve your margins via efficiency gains, better purchasing, reduction in errors and wastage, or simply discontinuing with products or services that have a poor margin. Once you derive your profit, you need to turn that into cash. Profitable businesses can and do go broke at times like these through lack of cash flow. You need to be looking at how you can maximize your cash flow using strategies to get paid quicker, reduce stock or work in progress, or by negotiating better payment terms with your suppliers. Now is not the time to be slow or lenient on debt collection. We need the money to keep spinning around in the economy to help recovery. Likewise, you need to be very careful about reordering stock. Can you operate with less stock, or are there items that you're likely to be in short supply? Other areas to help improve your cash flow are through better terms with your financiers. Can you go on to interest only, for example, on some of your loans? Can you get more government help? Likewise, there are many tax concessions available right now too, so you want to make sure you access them. So let's have a look at the 7 causes of poor cash flow. So your accounts receivable process is not up to date, and you're not following a procedure. Accounts payable process, again, you haven't got a strategy when and how to pay creditors. Your stock or work in progress process, you've got to make sure that your stock is managed properly, that work in progress is managed and billed properly. You've got inappropriate debt or capital structure. So you're financing, maybe you're financing long-term debt with short-term needs. So maybe you need to look, and maybe you need to put some of your debt onto a long-term loan. Overheads too high. Have you reviewed your overheads? Gross profit margin is too low. Have you looked at all the gross profit margin on all your product lines to find out which are the best margins and which are the lower margins? Can you increase those? And your sales are too low. So part of our cash flow management coaching service involves a full review of each of these 7 causes of poor cash flow, so that together we can make a plan to free up as much cash as possible. We have extensive resources we can share with you throughout this process so that you can implement the ideas with real power. So getting runs on the board quickly. So how do we pull all of this together in a meaningful way in our current climate and into the future? Outsource credit management where you can. Be careful here though, as if you suddenly enlist the service of a credit controller or debt collector with customers who you know are highly unlikely to be able to pay, then you risk irreparable damage to your brand. So if you already have a credit manager, then use them for your customers you know should be able to pay during these difficult times. Don't let the customers use the current crisis as an excuse not to pay. In either case, you're most likely going to be need to deal directly with the customers who can't pay you. Remember the points I made earlier about being empathetic with those customers, and use the guidance scripts that we've shown you. Revise your terms of trade and proposals. Make sure you don't have poor practice into the future. Once again, we have plenty of ideas we can share with you on a one-to-one basis as part of our cash flow management coaching service. The strategy you adopt here needs to be tailored for your particular business. Remember to look at your billing process. Get customers onto repeating or automated invoicing where you can, so that you're never slow in getting your invoices out. A lot of small businesses, in my experience, are so slow in getting their invoices out. And then you've got to actually collect the cash after that. So it just lengthens the cycle. Consider if it's possible to create contracts with your clients with more regular invoicing, e.g. a deposit on acceptance of a proposal, or interim invoicing or progress payments if appropriate. If you have additional or out of scope work, make sure you communicate that early and get an acceptance from your customer in advance of doing the work to avoid a complaint or invoice query or dispute after the work has been completed. Also, check that you revise your price list to ensure that the margins you expect are being preserved. A great way to do this anytime you have at home now is to back cost the last few jobs you've done to identify if the returns you are getting match what you expected when you issued your quote. Again, a lot of businesses don't go back and look at what the quote was and actually how much it actually cost them to do that job and how much profit they've made. Likewise, if you're in retail or hospitality, you can use this time to review your margins and pricing. With so much cloud-based technology now, it is a great time to be looking at how you can use that automation to free up your time and cash flow. As well as repeating invoices, consider how you can move your proposal or quoting process to a paperless and online option. Excuse me. Last but by no means least, take a look at your management controls and procedures about spending and invoicing. For example, set limits around what stock or products can be ordered. Consider how you could reduce your levels of stock or improve your efficiency in operations. Overstocking obviously just costs you money. Whatever you do, don't keep working for customers who don't pay. Again, the amount of times I see when I go into businesses that in their debtors printout in the third month and older, there are invoices outstanding, yet they're still continuing to do work on them for these customers. So you're running a business, and right now you need to reduce your risk wherever you can. So your next steps. So we set out for you the mindsets you need to have in these difficult times. To be empathetic, have backbone and heart around debt collecting and how to avoid shying away from selling it. We've shared best practice about credit control and debt collection and showed you a guide and scripts you can use. We've covered how to free up as much cash flow as possible by looking closely at your cash flow conversion cycle and business 101 model. We looked at the 7 causes of poor cash flow and how you can get runs on the board quickly to improve cash flow. Now, it's essential that you decide what you're going to do. As I said before, clearly doing nothing is not an option. Now's the time to put the oxygen mask on yourself and make a plan to get through this crisis. Part of the planning is to surround yourself with experts. We're here to help you. Remember to focus on what you can do. So with this in mind, we've developed a guide to credit control and some detailed scripts for debt management that you can have at no cost from us, which we'd like to share with you. So one of the things I'd like you to do when you finish the webinar is to sit for 5 minutes and consider 3 ways you can improve your debt control system, or 3 ways you can improve cash flow by looking at stock, invoicing, and all the items that we talked about. Okay, so that's enough from me. So Sinead, have we had any questions come in whilst I've been talking?
Thanks, Mike. Let me just have a quick look. Yeah, we've got one here. I find it hard having conversations about debt collection as I do the sales as well. What can I do?
This is a very typical question from smaller firms, and it is, yeah, this is really difficult. You've got to try and divide it up. So if you've got somebody else that can do your debt collection for you, then it's much better to take that function and give it to somebody else. Another possibility would be to outsource that. So rather than doing it yourself, do it to an outsource agency. Again, it divides the function between actual sales and debt collection. If you can't do any of that, then have separate conversations about it. Don't turn a sales call into debt collection. Make a separate call with regard to debt collection. Okay, are there any others?
Yeah, I've got another one here. Customers often say that they're going to pay me, but then I receive nothing. How can I deal with this?
Okay, yeah, another common sort of problem with debt collection. Again, the best way to deal with this is to record the conversation. So when you're having a conversation with somebody and they promise to pay you, you write it down, record it on your notes against that debtor, the time and the date, and what they've said. I would then follow it up with an email to the person saying, further to our conversation, you promised that you would pay me £100 on the 5th of May and £100 on the 20th of May. I look forward to receiving your remittances on those dates. And then you can, if you've got time, you can go even further by the day before, either ring them or email them again to say, I'm looking forward to remittance that you promised will be with me tomorrow. So that's really good. The trick to this is to have a system and to follow up. So if people know you're going to ring them and hound them for the money, they will start paying you. But you've got to do that on a consistent basis. If you're haphazard about it, it won't work. Debt collection is all about having a system and doing it consistently. So the debtor knows that he's not going to be off the hook, that he's going to have to pay you and hopefully pay you on the date when the amount is due. Okay, any others, Sinead?
No, that's just it, Mike, for today. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so thanks for making the time to attend the webinar. Apologies again for having to break off briefly to go and get me shopping, and apologies for not getting the slide share back up again quickly. But we appreciate that your time's very valuable, and we hope we've given you plenty of ideas to think about and some clear options for how we can support you. But before we go, I thought I'd share another quote with you. When you show deep empathy towards others, their defensive energy goes down and their positive energy replaces it. That's when you get more creative in solving problems. So let's make sure we approach our own cash flow challenges with empathy to get through this difficult time. Thanks very much and have a nice day.